disclaimer for this episode. I screwed up my audio. I am going to sound like total garbo. My apologies. Welcome everyone to Love and Pod, the weekly-ish, maybe if you squint a little, Trigun Stampede podcast. I am your host, Lady Zeon, the Double Fang, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Kai, the non-binary typhoon. Say hello, Kai.
Hello, I am here. I am ready to talk about Trigun again. I'm excited.
You're alive! Woo! Okay, yeah, so we are back. Sorry for the little impromptu hiatus. Things happen, but we are back. We're going to pick up from where we left off. So we're on episode 5, and to change up things, we are now talking about the dub. So, because by this point, the dub is out. So, might as well, save us some trouble, experience the dub. I'll probably end up watching both, honestly, for each episode. That's what I did for this one. And I'll probably do so, but, mostly I'm going to be referencing the dub. How about you, Kai?
Oh, yeah, I just watched the dub. I didn't know we were supposed to do both of them. That's fine.
Oh, no, it's fine. You don't have to do both. As long as you watch the damn episode and can talk about it. Shit, yeah. Honestly, you could just gaslight me, read a Wikipedia summary, and then, just tell me you totally watched it for realsies. I won't be able to call bullshit.
I just really like Johnny Young Bosch, man.
I mean, who doesn't love Johnny Young Bosch? He's goddamn Johnny Young Bosch. He's an icon in the goddamn industry for a reason.
He's been here from the early days of, anime getting big in the West, with Trigun. So, it's kind of hard to not get excited about hearing him in Trigun again, even if your feelings on the new material are kind of, back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of opinions going back and forth on this material, anyhow, let's give this one a recap. This episode is called Child of Blessing? I don't fucking remember. I'm not looking it up. Whatever. It's episode 5 of Stampede. The episode begins with a cold open of a family praying for the wind to blow. Their city seems to, instead of having a plant, has a windmill. Wind's not blowing. They have no power. And they're praying to their god for wind.
I actually do really love that we're leaning much further into the religious, side of the story than I remember the original anime. Right out the bat, I was like, oh, that makes this stand out. And I kind of like it.
Religious undertones were such a big part of original Trigun, both in the anime and in the manga. So, it definitely makes sense that, we'll definitely seeing more of, the regular everyday people who are absorbed into in-depth religious beliefs for positive and negative, as we will see in this episode. So, anyhow, going back to the summary, we cut to our heroes listening to the radio. Roberto exposition dumps, and then he exposition dumps some more, and exposition dumps some more. They find a dead big-ass bug that was punched to death, apparently. Then Vash walks off. Hard cut back to the family from the beginning. We have a child and his mother. The kid's name is Rolo, and he is questioning why God requires child sacrifices. And then hard cut back to our heroes. They're going into an abandoned city with a windmill plant, to which then Roberto gives us more fucking exposition on how windmills work. Then, as Vash is walking through the city, he is shot at, and a giant guy who is more guns than man jumps down, firing at him, yelling, Vash! Cut back to the kid, Rolo, overhearing that he has been selected as the sacrifice, and he runs away. Hard cut again, back to our heroes. Vash and Wolfwood take out the giant gunman. Then we find out that he actually has regenerative abilities. Hard cut to the kid, Rolo, who had run away. Vash meets him in the desert, hey, I heard you ran off. I was told to, try to bring you home. And the kid is talking about how, he doesn't have long to live, and he's sick, and Vash is just don't worry, if you ever need me, I'll protect you. And then, we find out that Vash had returned with medicine, but he returned too late. And Wolfwood kind of chastises him for making promises to this kid that he knew he couldn't keep. Hard cut again back to what we now know is the past, because that is not conveyed in the text. The kid is taken away to be sacrificed, and we see that he is being sacrificed actually to Knives' people. Back when they attacked the city Genora Rock, there was a scientist and a little girl with him, and that is who is in this room. And we find out that they performed a bunch of experiments on him, and that the giant man made of guns is the little kid Rollo. Also, we find out that Vash has apparently been here long before. Like, Meryl finds a picture of him holding baby Rollo, and Vash is trying to, like, talk Rollo down, and Wolfwood's all fucked up, and he cracks a vial open and uses it to heal his wounds. Wolfwood then shoots Rollo in the head. Vash loses his shit on Wolfwood, like, how could you, like, blah blah blah, and Wolfwood claps back at him about throwing his own ideologies in his face, like, I was doing this person a favor, like, they were too far gone, they didn't have a life, blah blah blah. And he's like, it's not your decision to make. And then finally, one last hard cut, we go to the scientist lab, where Zazie informs the scientist that his creation was killed, and specifically that he was killed by another one of the Doctor's creations, Wolfwood the Punisher. End of episode. Oh boy. Hey Kai, what did you think of this episode?
I got one word to describe the whole thing, and it's how I also described everything to do with Knives so far, and it's brutal. Like, yeah. This anime adaptation seems to be like, I don't have very good memory of reading the manga, but this seems to be especially brutal. But again, that's probably just because I process things easier in animation than reading manga.
Well, I mean, like, the manga is definitely brutal, but
yeah, right out the gate, I can't say it's more brutal than the manga because I'm not entirely sure, but it feels a lot more brutal than like the previous anime. Things like right out the gate, just having the kids straight out say, oh, why does God require child sacrifice? And then, oh yeah, he was chosen to be sacrificed. Just like, yep, that's where we're going. We're not, dancing around it. Wolfwood shooting him in the head, and we just see that happen right in front of Vash, right when Vash was giving himself a glimmer of hope that he could save him. Like, it's just so brutal. And I will say, for like all the twists, like, I'm rapid fire going through a lot of like quick thoughts I've had, but like all the twists that they pull in this episode were things that like I figured out just a few seconds before it was like revealed.
Right.
Like, we see Vash talking to Wolfwood about like why he's upset or something, and then it cuts to Rollo in the desert, and I'm like, oh my god, Rollo was like in the past, like this city's in the past, we're not seeing anybody else here or whatever, this isn't current time, this is the past thing. And then sure enough, we see Vash show up and talking to Rollo, and it's like, hey, I'm gonna bring you back home, figuring out that the big guy was Rollo. And I'm like, oh my goodness, wait, that's Rollo, isn't it? That's totally him. And then cut to Vash screaming, Rollo, no, this isn't you. And I'm like, oh my god, I knew it, which for me, when and I know that's like not something you can't perfectly plan in your writing to have happen, but for me, that's one of the most satisfying ways to experience some kind of twist, is figuring out seconds before the penny drops, But yeah, it's just, there's a lot, I think Roberto didn't annoy me as much this episode, but then you were talking about, oh, he did a bunch of exposition dumping at the beginning, and I'm like, I think I just straight up tuned him out.
Yeah, no, he gets all of his exposition dumping out in the beginning, and then he shuts the fuck up for the remainder of the episode, pretty much. Like, I mean, like, seriously, he talks about a plant-worshipping cult in the city of July. He talks about the color of sand is abnormal here because, like, some monster slaughtered people and turned the sand red, and it's just like, okay. Like, the plant worshipping cult thing is tied to like what they were listening to on the radio, which obviously ties into the radio stuff that we were hearing from the religious family at the beginning, which is interesting because, like, those two, okay, I can't tell if it's clever or stupid to have us listening to a religious broadcast in one scene in the past and then jump to the present and they're also listening to a religious broadcast, because it really confuses, like, this is taking place in the past. Like the episode is very deliberately keeping that from you, and I think it makes the episode worse for it, because I spent most of it really goddamn confused trying to figure out how these two disparate storylines were connecting, if at all. Like, did you have that problem?
I didn't have that problem, but I can totally understand and see why you did, because it is kind of like I see everything that you're saying, and I'm like, even though I didn't get the exact same reaction to it of being confused about what's in the past or present or what's going on, right? Mm-hmm. I do totally get how that is like kind of a questionable writing decision with the podcast, especially, or the broadcast especially, you know, because like, yeah, that didn't occur to me that would be like confuse the idea.
Yeah, and like nothing is really accidental in like art and in storytelling. Right. So like if you have a religious broadcast in one scene and in the very next scene there is characters listening to a religious broadcast, you are going to assume it's the same broadcast. Like, you know, it's the Kuleshov effect. It's like you put two scenes together and your brain connects the tissue together. And I understand like why they would kind of want to keep that reveal to them a little bit, but because it kept bouncing back and forth, it became really disorienting for me, where like it being a cold open was fine, and then it being a reveal later. But like the fact that it kept jumping back and forth, and I didn't even like really grasp that, because I'm like, okay, like are they just in this city? What's going? It wasn't until like, and I should just say, like, the big gun man, he's Monev the Gale of the Gung Ho Guns. Like, this is their version of him.
Yeah, I knew I recognized him. I couldn't remember, like, the name. And I was like, Rolo doesn't sound familiar. I was like...
no. Like, his name, that's Monev the Gale. And so, like, when Monev starts attacking the city, and then they hard cut back to, like, the flashback... At that point, I was just like, okay, like maybe this has to take place in the past. And that's when I started putting together that this kid might have been Monev. Honestly, here's the mistake I was making throughout most of it, which was the religious broadcast they were listening to was clearly in reference to the Eye of Michael, which is the organization that created Wolfwood and Levio. So when I saw this kid listening to an Eye of Michael like broadcast, and like the side of his face is kind of fucked up, I'm like, oh, this kid's Levio. This kid's gonna be Levio the Double Fang.
That was my first thought too.
And so then when he ended up being Monev the Gale, I was very confused.
Yeah, that was my first thought too. But I was like, but that doesn't seem quite right. That would be Levio, like. You know, but also
Then they do like, the reveal, and I don't know kind of how I feel about this episode. I feel very middle of the road on it, because there's some cool stuff here, some really good stuff here, but like I feel like kind of once again that kind of first draft syndrome that we're always bringing up, but like Vash apparently has a history with this town. He, like, literally knew Rolo as a baby.
Yeah,
and I felt like that was really kind of stretching my suspension of disbelief. That's like, he has such a connection to this town. That he knew this kid as a baby, and his mother took a picture of him as a baby being held by Vash the Stampede. And then, like, when he finds him in the desert, the kid is just like, oh, yeah, like, you're Vash the Stampede. You're the humanoid typhoon. So I'm guessing this is the first time he has seen Rolo since literally being a baby. It was so weird that, like, Vash just happened to show up right when this kid ran away, and his mother was able to, like, get Vash to go find her kid and bring him back to be sacrificed, Which at no point does Rolo go, yeah, you're taking me back to go get sacrificed to God.
I was okay, so I have like some deep I guess philosophical like I don't know background of being very religious at like cradle Catholic. Even still, I am very religious still, but at the same time, like I can connect a lot to where Rolo's head was at in a lot of that
Mm-hmm.
because of just how child brains work. But I also wanted to
Right.
add that like I with the thing about like Vash knowing Rolo since a baby, I don't see what that added. It feels more like it confuses, like, okay, so he's known him, like, it feels more like it confuses things than it does add to it. Because Vash
Yeah.
already, and we already know this, Vash already cares very deeply for every life. Even, like, before he
Mm-hmm.
figured out it was Rolo, or at least I'm assuming it was before he figured out it was Rolo, he was, like, upset to think that, like, big gun guy might have gotten killed, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like, and we already established this about him. He doesn't want to see anybody get hurt, and he wants to help as many people as possible. And sometimes he's a bit too trusting in that front. And so
Mm-hmm.
we don't need to see that. Oh no, he has a special connection with this town and this kid specifically. No, like I could totally believe that in the past he happened upon this town at the time when Rolo had run away, and there's a mother crying and freaking out about her kid running away, and she doesn't give all the details about the fact that the sacrifice is coming, and Vash
Mm-hmm.
offers to go help find him. And Vash is such a charismatic guy. Like I can agree, I can believe all that
Yeah.
without needing to see that. Oh no, but you see, he has a connection with this family from the like. You didn't need that. What did that
Yeah.
add?
Also, like, if he has this kind of connection with the family, does he know that they're part of a religious cult that sacrifices children?
Right? That like obviously they had been sacrificing children for long enough to Rolo to be wondering about it and to know that it's like accepted as a fact of life to the point of being able to ask why do we do it in the
Mm-hmm.
like and I'm gonna say he's probably what like 10-ish, maybe preteen age,
Yeah.
which again I can get into all of the like psychology of that because that felt very relatable and real to me about how he was asking about their religion and stuff like that. But
Right.
it was just like really weird of like it yeah, the fact of trying to add that there's a deeper connection between Vash and Rolo than any other random kid, it just feels like it confuses things more than it adds to
Yeah.
the drama.
Also, adding to this, Vash also apparently came back with medicine, and Rolo had already been sacrificed by that point.
So he didn't know it was going to happen.
Vash has no clue. Like, we gave this, like, extra dark element to this story of Vash is personally responsible for this kid becoming this monster, and he has no fucking clue. He doesn't learn that in the episode. Like, because
Oh.
Rolo in this episode, he doesn't speak. He's just like movie 2 Broly yelling Kakarot.
You're right. You're right. It's just sorry. I had to process the Broly comparison for a second. It just made me giggle because you're absolutely correct. I can see him showing like knowing now that that happened and having that guilt weigh on him. Like if I may, I would love to just like go off for a second about all the like relatability and the connections between like being a child being raised, you know, cradle to this like religion and stuff.
Pop off, my
Because
friend, pop off.
yeah, okay. So there is like a delicate way to handle like raising a kid because you want to be careful that you're not and this is just for anything, but especially with religion, you don't want to be teaching the kids of your faith to just blindly believe whatever some random adult says. That is not what you want to do, but that is the pitfall a lot of people run into. That's why it's like, yeah, I know I am very Catholic, but I also am well aware that there's a lot of really awful, people who are Catholic, and there's also a lot of parents who like make a lot of mistakes in raising their kids Catholic because they don't know what they're, kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things. That's one of the very common mistakes is it's because we said so, right? Whereas me growing up in like a household where by the time I was like in high school, my dad was joining the diaconate, anytime I asked questions about the faith, I got direct answers and comparisons, and like, this is where this comes from, this is why we believe this, and this is like, here's some of the like historical context for it, and this, that, and the other, right? And some of it is like, oh yeah, this is a mystery of faith, that this is one of those things you have to put faith in. But it wasn't like anytime I asked, why do we do this, I got the answer, well, because God said so. That's not the answer I ever got, but it is the answer a lot of people get. And kids at like around Rollo's age at that time, that's when you're a cradle born into the faith, that's around the age you start to question it, and you start wanting answers, because that's around the age you start to question everything adults tell you. Like, I tell people that it's a little early, but it is also around that time. The difference is between like childhood is believing adults know everything, adolescence is realizing they don't and hating them for it, and adulthood is realizing nobody knows anything ever, right? And so it's like that kind of preteen age. And I know, again, I'm kind of assuming his age, but he seems like he's around like 10, 11, 12 or something. Especially if he's sick, is like he would appear a little younger even than he actually is.
Right.
So it makes sense. That would be the age where he's like, why do we sacrifice children? And if you notice, the mom's answer doesn't actually answer why that's necessary. She just says, isn't death a wonderful thing?
Yeah, no, it's just like it's the end goal, and you're giving yourself to God. That's wonderful.
Why don't you do with it? Like, that doesn't answer the question.
Yeah, this shit's so fucking great. Why don't you go first, bitch?
Yeah. But it's like, that's the point that I was like, oh man, that's like comparing to, like, that's the sort of answer a lot of people get when they start asking their religious parents around that age questions like, oh gosh, why don't we eat meat on Fridays during Lent? What's up with that? A lot of people just go, well, don't you like fish? Don't you like eating fish? I thought it was your favorite meal. Whereas, like, in my case with my family, the good example of what you do, they broke down the historical context of it.
Right.
And then continued on to explain why we allow fish and why it's only on Fridays, even though it used to be all that, right? And I don't know, that's part of why I think I got a lot more out of this episode than it seems like you did, because I related to it, even if I related to it in a way of going, I've seen this happen to people around me my whole life, and I've also experienced these feelings that Rollo's experiencing. And that includes the, like, everyone tells me to just pray to God and he'll fix everything, but I feel like me not believing hard enough is what's causing it to, like, is what's causing God to ignore my prayers. And I felt that on a deep and personal level for that age, especially. And then when somebody tells you, oh, well, no, just keep, and that's the common mistake where people say, well, maybe, so just believe harder. That's not the answer you're supposed to give, but unfortunately it's the answer a lot of people give. And that's essentially what Vash told him was, well, okay, we'll just put faith in me instead. He did that, and then Vash couldn't be there because, Wolfwood was right here. Like, you made a promise you couldn't possibly keep. What did you think? You were going to have, like, a chip on this kid? You're going to be able to hear anytime he called your name and you could, like, teleport to him? What did you think was going to happen? Nah, that's it.
Another thing that doesn't quite work for me in this episode is, okay, we have established that this kid was part of an experiment under the eye of Michael, and that he also made Wolfwood, and that the scientist is, this doctor is under the employ of Knives. So now the Eye of Michael being their own separate thing that Knives found and recruited is now just a thing that he created. And that's kind of lame to me because it makes the world smaller. Like, Moneb the Gale was part of the Eye of Michael. He was an experiment of them. And the Eye of Michael is part of, Knives' organization. And it's just like...
That's a good point. It does kind of take away from the manipulation factor of Knives. Because, like, the Eye of Michael stuff, if, to my understanding, like, from the original manga and everything, like, Knives... I think you just said it too. Knives recruited them after they were already doing shenanigans.
Yeah.
And you do that by being a charismatic manipulator, great deceiver, all that good stuff.
Like, I could see, like, the idea being that, like, this version of Knives really sees himself as, like, a messiah, as a god, and, that he would form a religion literally around him. I could totally see him being that, but, like, taking all these characters that had their own unique origins, and Monev the Gale, he was just some dude with big guns who fucked shit up that Knives had hired, as opposed to Monev the Gale, an experiment of the Eye of Michael, who works under Knives. It makes the world feel smaller. It's that kind of like it reminds me of like when Sony was gonna do like their own Spider-Man universe, and like all of the villains came from Oscorp, and it just contracts the world instead of letting it feel more lived in and interesting, in my opinion, when you just tie everything back to this one person.
It weakens Knives's like philosophy and point when you say that he was pulling the strings with pretty much everything bad, and when you connect every bad person or practically every bad person and every bad thing that happens directly to Knives started it weakens Knives's point. Which
for a story like
Trigun, it's really like the whole point is you have the humans suck, let's get rid of them, versus human life is valuable because it's human life.
And like it really does devalue Knives's philosophical stance if humans are shitty and violent, because he's specifically orchestrating he because before he had just found these powerful lowlives. Here, he's creating them.
Yeah, and so it goes from, like, more of a trying to make the point of, like, he sees himself as a god and above everyone else, can be compared to the story of, like, Satan and the devil, all that good stuff from, like, the Christian theology, in the sense of, but, like, in the original, like we're saying, like, even like that comparison's stronger because of the fact that the story everybody knows in the Garden of Eden, Satan didn't make Eve eat the apple, he just convinced her to, and she already wanted to. And so whereas here it's he literally orchestrated the creation of Mongave the Gale here,
Yeah.
So it's like there's a difference between I think I could be a better god and can run everyone better, versus I'm gonna make everybody look worse to prove my point to my brother.
Yeah, I'm just not digging this direction that they're going. Like, I'm gonna be really upset if we find out like Zazie the Beast was also created in a fucking lab by Knives.
We're gonna end this thing in the one character who's just an asshole because he's an asshole and had nothing to do with Knives is gonna be Roberto.
Yeah. Also, like, man, we're really throwing out like the spoilers in this one, Wolfwood, he like cracks open that vial and then heals himself. And I was like, oh, wow. Because, like, at first, like, okay, he pulls out the vial. I'm like, okay, well, we're not going to see what that vial does. We're just going to see him do whatever he does next. And then, like, oh, nope, he cracks the vial open, and we see him heal up in the exact same way that Monev was healing. And then it's like, okay, so I guess we are going to, throw that little, hint out there now. It's like, there's more to Wolfwood than you think. And then it's just like, oh, by the way, he was also created by the scientist that works under Knives. And it's just like, what? Oh, okay. Because also, god damn, that really just ties Knives to Wolfwood a lot stronger.
Yeah, as opposed to Wolfwood just, his original story and all that was a lot more individual and not really connected to Knives. And that's why he was able to connect to Vash in the originals, because he wasn't that connected to Knives to begin with.
In the manga, like, Wolfwood joins Knives essentially by accident, because he takes out his master Chapel and goes in his place, not realizing what he's getting himself into, and kind of gets sucked up into, that whole part of, the story. Where here, it's like, he was created by the scientist who works for Knives. And I'm like,
On the one hand, I can see the appeal of wanting to have more direct connections between Knives and everything bad that happens. I can see the appeal of that, but I don't think it works for this particular story. Then again, I don't know if maybe they're just straight up doing a totally different thing.
right.
But it still is like, I can't help but, like, I don't know, there's a lot here that still feels like it's trying to make that same, like, philosophical argument between human life is precious because it exists and it doesn't need a reason versus human life is garbage because they ruin everything. Which is like the whole core of Trigun comes down to that. That's why it's like Vash and Knives are the like opposing forces in it.
So I'm going to transition things to my bitchy fangirl moment. Because, like, okay. Mona of the Gale's redesign is fucking raw. Let's go put that out there right now. That is a sick as fuck redesign. I think it is very cool. I also think it's very cool that, like, it literally has, like, wind turbines, like, built into the guns that, like, shoot out gusts of air, like, tying back into the Mona of the Gale part of his name, which is a thing that he didn't really have before.
And it's the fact that it's like connected to. I feel like we're having the opposite thing with the issues we had with, like, I changed my name with the previous guy.
Oh yeah, no, like the name change before made no fucking sense. But here's the thing. Okay, I don't like this version of Mona of the Gale in comparison to the original, because before, Mona of the Gale, though a kind of one-dimensional character, was still a character. Here, he is a shouty, half-gun, half-human monster man who shouts Vash with a sad backstory. I don't think that's as interesting. Like, he's not really a character. Like, he just yells Vash, and then we find out, oh, this is the kid. And then Vash confirms that he knows it's the kid. And then Wolfwood shoots him in the fucking head. It's... What? Monev's fight with Vash in the manga was so fucking dope. It was so fucking cool. And here, it's just him not wanting to hurt this person, obviously, because like, Mona very specifically wanted to, like, push Vash to his fucking limit. And he, like, triggered Vash's, like, fight or flight mode. And Vash fucking wrecks his shit. Because I think in the manga, like, he literally, like, uses, like, Meryl as like, like, threatening to kill Meryl. And then, like, that finally snaps Vash, and Vash wrecks the ever-loving shit out of him. And that's when you get that great fucking line of, like, he has the eyes of the Diablo.
Yeah.
It's so fucking cool. Like, no matter which version you're watching, it's cool. It's raw. It's bad fucking ass. I love that scene. I loved it in the original series. I love it even more in the manga. And here we get none of that. We just get screaming monster man attacks Vash in a town. Vash has some history with this kid, kinda, sort of. And the most fucked up part of that backstory that he has with this kid, him having been personally responsible for this kid being turned into a monster because he took him back to the fucking crazy religious cult he lived with. He doesn't even know that part. So, like, the really tragic, fucked up part of that story, we don't even get the emotional weight of that for our main character. There's nothing here other than Vash is sad that he got shot, which I guess is, like, a neat throwback to when, because they're trying to do the Zazie the Beast thing from when Wolfwood shot him in the classic anime. But, this episode bugs the shit out of me. Like, as just a regular episode, I'm like, yeah, no, it's fine. But, like, the fangirl part of my brain is just so agitated.
Yeah,
by
it's just so far off.
This episode specifically.
Yeah, it was something you were probably, like, looking forward to see, like, because you, like, remembered that in the manga and stuff being so badass and raw. Yeah, you're right. I do kind of miss all that. That was really awesome.
Yeah, because, like, that was such a big character moment and turning point for Vash. and to replace like you took E.G. Mine, one of the like lamest fucking gun-ho guns who was deliberately designed to be lame, and you still kind of like made him a jobber, but also like made him a far more interesting character with his brief amount of screen time that he had. And then you do Monev the Gale, and he's fucking Dragon Ball Z Broly. Tragic baby backstory and all.
I think with in the case of like in defense of this anime, which again, like I do get like, yeah, it is like way off and different from the original, and like how are you gonna get that back if you just got rid of Mona the Gale altogether this way, you know? The anime as it stands on its own with the like, oh, he's just Vash is stamping and chasing him down. It's like that had like, unlike with the Dragon Ball Z Broly thing, where it was like kind of I know I've seen people like give reasoning for it and all that. I never really liked Z Broly to start with. Those movies always like put me to sleep, so I never cared too much to get involved in those conversations. But I know people said like, oh no, I don't know, the reasoning for it with Dragon Ball Z and with Broly seems really weak whenever people try to explain it. Whereas here, I feel like it does serve the greater narrative purpose that they're doing, which is like the big when Vash tells him like, why did you, or when Vash asks Wolfwood, why did you shoot him, you know, and Wolfwood just very flatly and just goes, it was mercy. And it's like, that's the big key of like, he was straight up like had no more, like I think, yeah, had no more humanity and all that, and he was just a ball of hate. And that comes down to the point of like, he was so far gone that it was mercy to kill him, which ties into the challenging Vash's pacifism and Vash's ideals of everyone, like, no one deserves to take anybody else's life ever under any circumstances, you know, and that's his ideal. And that really called that into question, because we got to see like firsthand that Rollo was gone. You know, he was just a monster with nothing but hate and anger and frustration, because he got turned into that in a very like important moment of his life when he was starting to come into his own understandings and ideologies of the world and connecting that to religion and stuff. And in that moment, he got betrayed, and so all he can feel is the anger from that betrayal now. When that's the only emotion you got, you're not really human anymore, really. And so that felt like it had a lot more of a purpose, and like just in defense of it, because I actually really like that. I like that storyline and that idea, and having that be the big, like, words are failing me this episode.
Yeah.
Having that like, be the big thing to put, like, to throw in Vash's face and be like, there was no other, like, there was no saving.
I don't know, like, the whole thing just felt weird to me. It felt a little rushed. You had the whole thing of Wolfwood killing Rollo and Vash losing his shit. He's like, oh, well, he's just better off this way. He was suffering, blah, blah, blah. It's like, how do you know? You don't know anything about this. I mean, okay, he obviously does know. Too. But, like, technically he doesn't know. Like, he shouldn't know that this is, like, some freakish monster made by the scientist who gave him superpowers. Like, so it just, I don't know. So many things in this episode just don't, like, fit together for me. Like, and I'm not sure where the actual problem lies. Like, I've seen this episode twice now. Yeah. And
I feel you on that. So I will agree. Something feels off in how it was presented, even if it's like, it feels like all the pieces individually work well on their own and should work, but something still feels like it's not connecting right, and it is kind of a struggle to figure out where that is. Also because I think this is the first time you and I have like actually come out of an episode like with completely different feelings towards it, because I really liked it, clearly because I had like strong resonance to what was going on, and I could go, that's very real, and that's feels real and emotional to me.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, you know, and that's interesting. But I still do see, like, yeah, there's something not clicking.
I think what we really needed in this episode was for Rollo to be more kind of sentient, you know, to like maybe chastise Vash and like have some dialogue there. any kind of humanity on Rolo's part is honestly, I think, something that we really, really needed.
Yeah, like maybe something more directly saying what he was pissed off about and where he felt betrayed as opposed to just saying his
Yeah.
name.
And he can directly call attention to the fact that he became this monster because Vash took him back. And
Mm-hmm.
Vash could have to live with that weight, which I'm sure at some point, God, I hope at some point, that will be revealed to Vash. Like, oh, you know that kid Rolo? He was turned into a monster by me because you took him back to his mom. Like, because that dialogue needs to happen. That emotional
Yeah, I
gut
feel
punch
like
needs to happen. And I would like to think that this show is
I think
smart
that's it.
enough to, if they didn't do it in this episode, then they are going to do it in a future one as an emotional gut punch for Vash.
I think that's it. I think you just cracked the code of like that's what feels off is that it's like the guilt and the way that Bash feels responsible like doesn't hit the same with him not like with us the audience not seeing any evidence of him knowing that he turned the kid over to be
Right.
sacrificed. You know, like we can infer that he figured it out eventually, but we didn't see that happening, and so it's like kind of a hard sell.
For all we know, Vash feels like he failed the kid because he didn't bring him medicine in time. But like at no point is Vash questioning the fact that Rolo was now like an 8 foot tall gun toting monster man.
I'm gonna chalk that up to the first draft syndrome of like it just slipped the writers' minds of like
Yeah.
including that connection. They got distracted by other
Like
things. That's what I'm thinking now. I think you just
like
cracked it.
like
Like that's
what
what
this
was
episode
missing.
really needed, once again playing script doctor. I think the cold open with the prayer is good. And I think it even going into like, the our heroes hearing the prayer thing broadcast on the radio as that juxtaposition, that works great too, tying the two things together, making you not sure if this is in the past or the present. But then we need more dialogue. We need like a little bit of exposition from like oddly enough, an episode needed more exposition. And not from Roberto. We
Yeah,
needed Vash to be
exactly.
like, oh, I've been here before. I'm looking for a friend. And he can, maybe flash us back to taking that kid back. And then Monev shows up, attacks him, and then Monev starts, conversing with Vash like, you're the reason I'm like this. You did this. You betrayed me, blah, blah, blah. And Vash has to have like this big emotional coming to the realization that he is responsible for this person's current state.
Yeah. You told me my mother was worried about me and cared about me, and then she still
Yeah.
turned me in anyways, you know? That could have done a lot for it on its own.
Yeah.
But
There was a
yeah.
lot of ways to handle this episode, and mm, I've said pretty much everything I wanted to say. How about you?
Everyone get your shot glasses out because funny thing, I'm not going to go on too long obviously.
God damn it.
Funny thing, right? Funny story. Just not too long ago, just recently with I put out like before even season 4 dropped, I had put out like a big old post and had gotten into conversations with people analyzing Sun Wukong and Monkey Kid with the point of like all because he accepted blame and responsibility for something doesn't mean he was to blame. But that's also not bad character writing because I was making the point of there's a lot of people out there who think I just need to take the blame, and if I take the blame, I can fix it, and if I can fix it, then well, it's fixed. And funnily enough, that ties back into that idea of Vash, even though we look outsiders looking in can go, oh, come on, it wasn't his fault. He didn't know. Even if he didn't know at the time, he can still feel responsible because there's just people who are like that, who they take responsibility for things out of hindsight, even when it's not fair to them to do that. And I just find it very, like, kind of ironic in a way that I just recently had this whole, like, analysis moment in the fandom talking about another character with that exact problem. And now we're here, like, if we could have seen more of that being what was going on, that would have made this episode better. Tell me what drink you took in the comments.
And that was your Kai Monkey Kid moment of the episode. Now, time for the ratings. Like, a lot of my complaints I have are more as a fan of Trigun, like, oh, you changed the source material, like, or you ruined Monev type stuff. So, I really want to take that out of the equation and just talk about, like, from a structure standpoint, like, this episode on its own merits, I'm gonna give 3.5 bullets because I think it's average. It's okay. And it just edges out onto the upper end of okay just because it has really good action. There's some good emotional beats. Had they kind of, done more with the whole backstory with Vash and everything, tying it to the kid and how he created Monev and all these other elements. I think it could have been a much stronger episode. This easily could have been like a 5 out of 6 bullets episode. But as is, the episode that we got, I'm giving it 3.5 bullets.
So for me, I know that like a big part of like my enjoyment of this episode was having like that personal resonance. And so, I don't want to discount that because me having such a strong personal resonance is like, yeah, that's art. But also at the same time, that does like in and of itself cause a bias.
Right.
So I'm gonna go with the 4.5 because I'm gonna go with
Okay.
4.5 because I do think the episode was like really good, but I think a majority of, oh my gosh, this episode was so amazing and got so much out of it and I loved it, that like if it weren't for the fact that I can recognize that it is because I just personally resonated with that like story of like, this is how not to raise a child from birth into a religion,
right.
Like, same with how you're saying most of your complaints were it's not the source material, and that's most of what took you out of it. Most of what pulled me in was
right. Like
personal stuff.
I really appreciate a lot of things this episode was trying to do, but I think it needed another draft. I think they needed like another go around with the scripting process to like tie these disparate elements together for a stronger outcome, which has been the consistent problem with every episode where it's just like you're almost there. Like you got the pieces, you're not putting them together correctly.
Yeah, that's what it feels like every episode. It's always just first draft syndrome of you're so close. Oh, there was the one other thing I wanted to bring up. I told you before we started recording because I don't remember the details of who left the comment or everything of what the comment said. But there was a comment on the last one on the YouTube channel that I really did enjoy reading, but also wanted to kind of respond to, where they were like in defense of Roberto, because we really went on bully Roberto hours last one.
As we should.
And, yeah, and like in their defense, and this is valid points to make, they were saying that obviously I'm paraphrasing because it's been a while since I read it, but they were saying that Roberto acts as like a direct, like hard, extreme foil to Vash's philosophy, whereas Wolfwood is a little lighter on it and all that. And so that's the purpose that he serves. And like, yeah, that's all well and good, but I still say that it's not so much what his character represents, so much as the fact that all he is nihilistic talking point, like not even delving too deeply into the philosophy, just like the surface level talking point. It's a dog eat dog world, drink and exposition in a very kind of clunky mansplaining kind of way. And that's why he's like so annoying. And I think you can agree with me. That's why the both of us find him so annoying, is because anytime he opens his mouth, it's one of those
it's always,
and it's like, where's the rest of the character? Wolfwood's endearing, Wolfwood's endearing because he's joking around and he's still a little goofy at points. He still feels human. Ironically enough, he still feels human.
Yeah. And like Roberto is just grumpy old man who mansplains and drinks. And if I wanted that, I would just like walk into a Republican convention.
Honestly, yeah. But that's all. That's all I really had to say.
Alrighty.
Yeah.
Well, that was an episode. Fairly decent episode. You know, you got more out of it than I did. And that's cool. I think that's totally valid.
Art.
Hopefully, next episode will go better. I think Livio actually does show up next episode because I was seeing advertisements showing Livio like being in the series, and it's like, oh, cool. Like, I don't know if that was next episode or the episode after. I don't know. I'll get to it, guys. No spoilers in the comments. I know we're behind, but no spoilers. And till next time, guys. I don't know. I don't.
Love and peace.
Yeah, love and peace.